Nerds, I have Jess and Zach from Level Up California. They've also been longtime members of the Yang Gang. We're going to catch up on what they're up to and some current events. But first,
Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up. Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's and Drew, come roll with the Yang Gang. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up. Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's and Drew, come roll with the Yang Gang.
hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
All right, guys. It's good to have you on a Sunday morning. I know there's a lot going on in the world, and then we've talked on Twitter about like, oh, maybe we should talk about Level Up on the Nerd Show, and I'm glad we finally made it happen. Maybe we'll start with some introductions. Jess, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Very happy to be here. So I'm Jess Montgomery. Been with the California Yang Gang since the early days, although not as early as Zach, and helped lead the transition into Level Up California, which is where we are now. I'm based in Sacramento, and in my day job, I'm an attorney.
Well, welcome, Jess.
Thank you.
Zach, tell us.
Hey, I'm Zach. I was also very early in California Yang Gang. I actually had Jess's first call. She asked me a lot of questions that I didn't know the answer to, so I had to really step up my game. But I got involved in the Yang 2020 campaign back before there was even an active volunteer program, really. So I kind of helped build that out and got really excited about it. I work in film and a lot of freelance visual effects, so I had some time during the campaign and was just like really excited to dig in. And I knew nothing about politics almost, but I just wanted to help Yang out, and so I just kept on doing stuff with the campaign and grassroots stuff, and ended up being a regional organizer along with Jess, and we built out a pretty formidable grassroots organization with California Yang Gang. And then after the campaign ended, we wanted to keep it going, and I actually left for a while because I was on a really demanding job, and Jess took over as kind of the de facto president and became the actual president of Level Up California when we incorporated. But I am the new president of Level Up because Jess has been working hard and needs a break, and I'm done with my job and I'm ready to get back into it.
Right on. Well, tell me a little bit about how you've observed the Andrew's sort of initiatives since that presidential campaign. We had the New York City mayoral run, and then now the Forward Party. Are both of you still kind of as excited about what Andrew's up to, or do you feel like you're going to focus more on kind of the policy ideas and bring it to California? Like what's the relationship between, let's say, Level Up and Andrew's kind of top initiatives these days?
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on that first. So we, absolutely support Andrew Yang, and while we weren't necessarily involved with the mayoral campaign because we're all the way out here in California, we really appreciate his new dedication to electoral reform, specifically ranked choice voting. We have a great relationship with Cal RCV, which I'm sure Zach and I will talk about later in this session. But we love that he's highlighting these sort of structural foundational issues that are so important in order to address other issues that we care about from the campaign, like universal basic income and environmental protection. So we're also exploring deeper relationships with organizations like the Forward Party. To us, it seems like the Forward Party is also focused on electoral reform. So we really are hoping for opportunities to work together, especially in California, in order to make that a reality.
Awesome. Well, and Zach, what's your take as you've observed Yang's pushes and initiatives? It's hard to keep track. I look back and I'm like, my God, this guy ran for president, ran for mayor, and starting a third party in the what feels like the last 2 years. What's your read on the connection between Level Up and ranked choice voting and the Forward Party now, I guess?
Sure. I mean, I think we're all here because of Andrew Yang to begin with. So it's like I can't. It would be hard to say that I don't support what he's doing. I think that one of the things that we want to do at Level Up is, and one of the reasons that we actually rebranded away from California Yang Gang is that we love the policy ideas and we don't necessarily want to be tied specifically to Andrew Yang. I think that he started this movement that now has so much traction in so many different areas. Like UBI wasn't really a thing, and now it's a big thing. There's tons of guaranteed income pilots going on. People are talking about it. You had the stimulus checks going out that were basically a brief UBI. I think that one of our focuses is bringing those policy ideas that he has popularized into a broader coalition of people. So we want to make sure that we don't get, there's elections can be a bit of a bit crazy, and you can have people who are diehard fans of one candidate or another. And so we just want to make sure that we can bring more people into the fold. And ultimately, I think that we are very closely following a lot of the things that he's doing, because at the end of the day, like a lot of the ideas that we like are ideas that, he has spent a lot of time thinking about and researching. And so like we can read forward and look at all the things in there and think this is great. In terms of a third party, one of the interesting things about helping start the California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition is that while there are a lot of things that everyone agrees upon in terms of getting ranked choice voting out there being a fundamental reform, there are a lot of questions about, well, is the third party the right way to do this? And so I think that at the end of the day, it's better for us to focus on things like concrete policy initiatives, like getting ranked choice voting passed in California. And then if that ends up helping a forward party, that's great.
Cool. Now you both mentioned there's Level Up California, and then there's a ranked choice voting initiative. Are they the same group, or are they different efforts?
Yeah, they're different groups, but there are a lot of folks that are intimately involved in both. So the coalition was born a while ago. Sacramento, we had a really great tight-knit Yang gang out here. And in, I think it was February, when Andrew suspended his presidential campaign, we were all really devastated, to be frank. But we sort of understood that a lot of the problems that he talked about and the solutions he proposed, those didn't necessarily go away just because he wasn't running for president anymore. So we sort of took an internal poll, and all of us felt that electoral reform was probably number one for us. And so we had a regular table at the farmers market that we were using to, talk to folks about Andrew. And we said, let's rework all of this and make it an RCV weekly tabling experience. So we got someone from the League of Women Voters to give us a little bit more, of a nuanced education about RCV and how it works, because, it's quite a simple and elegant idea, but in practice, there can be some complexities. And so we, got new literature, and we all felt like we were ready to go out and talk to people in Sacramento about RCV, and it was going great. We had done it for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden COVID happened. And during this process, we had connected with Rank the Vote, Californians for Electoral Reform, I believe Represent Us, and a couple other groups. And we had, in this process of the state of RCV in California, when we were getting more educated, we looked around and said, hey, there are all these disparate groups in California working on RCV, but they don't necessarily seem to be working together. This doesn't necessarily seem like the most efficient way to actually make this happen. If everyone has a common goal, then at the very least, we should have a common space to discuss it. So we started a Slack workspace just for the purpose of connecting everyone and trying to make sure that we were all, moving in the right direction, that our initiatives were all complementary to one another's, et cetera. And sort of created this brain trust. And after COVID, it went a little dormant because we were all a little worried that the world was ending. But a little while ago, we had some folks come in who were re-engaged. And these folks, a lot of them were from Californians for Electoral Reform, or CFER. And they really wanted to put in the volunteer hours and make it happen. So a lot of us folks at Level Up worked with them to create what is now the California Ranked Choice Voting Coalition, which is this amazing, vibrant organization, it's just doing amazing work. And I'll let, because he is extremely involved in CalRCV as well.
Yeah, Zach, tell us, how's it going with the ranked choice voting initiatives here in
It's
California?
going well. I'm the tech team lead at the Ranked Choice Voting Coalition, which I'm not a tech guy, so it's been interesting. I tell everyone that I'm more of a cheerleader for the tech team than actually a part of it. But I'm pretty involved in a lot of different aspects, and it is going incredibly well. They're raising a lot of money. There's tons of new volunteers coming in every day. It's been really great to see how you can have an organization that is non-existent, just started out as just a bunch of people in a Slack, and then getting on a Zoom call and saying, all right, what are we doing? What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And then seeing it executed. So we had a big launch event with the support of Rank the Vote, had a big fundraising ask during the event, and raised something like, I don't know, $6,000, $8,000 right off the bat. And that helped us get set up with a lot of the tools that we needed to keep on growing. There's tabling happening almost every week. And we're bringing in a lot of people who are ultimately going to help us build this massive coalition that will get ranked choice voting passed in California. Right now, there's local elections going on, or local campaigns getting started up in San Jose, San Diego, Santa Clara. There's a few others that I don't know how many I'm supposed to actually talk about, or if any of these are actually private. I won't say more. But it's
some of them
going
are
really
in the
well.
incubation stage. Yeah.
Now, these efforts, is it to introduce ranked choice voting, in terms of like city council elections, or is it for like, where do you start?
It's a combination of those things. So ultimately, I think the mission of the coalition is to get a statewide ballot measure and get ranked choice voting passed in California. And what form that takes is still up for discussion, because I think one of the things that the coalition is doing really well is making sure that it has the buy-in of everyone who's a part of the coalition. So instead of just saying, this is what we're doing, and we've got these like 30 people who are doing it, now come help us with this thing. They want to bring a lot of people in and say, okay, now we've got hundreds of people. How can we all agree on something that we want to do and want to put our time into? So I think, sorry, can you repeat? It's still a little early. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm wondering, where do you start? Like, if assuming we all want more ranked choice voting, does it begin with
Right.
at the local level, or is
Yes.
it like a statewide thing? Everybody immediately embraces
Yeah, it's
this?
starting at the local level, because I believe that it's been 3 times now that ranked choice voting has gone through the California legislature, and it's been vetoed 3 times. And there are people more knowledgeable than me about why that is. But in most cases, it was the rationale was something along the lines of, it's not that well tested. We need to know more before we can actually have this implemented. There were other more political reasons, from what I've heard, but we're going to take them at their word for it and say, okay, well, let's get it implemented in more local jurisdictions and figure out, let's show that it works. Let's educate people. And yeah, so lots of education, really making it a grassroots movement, but really focusing on the local level first and getting some key cities in the bag before we say, look, let's just do it in the entire state.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had last week a professor of government from Bowdoin College in Maine, and they were talking about, he was talking about how in a recent ranked choice voting election over there, they had one person who is a bit of a polarizing figure and had like, call it 40% of the state, supporting him or his district supporting him. And then the opposition was splintered across a number of candidates, that represented the other 60%. And then because of the ranked choice voting, eventually the number 2 person accumulated, more than the 50%. And in a first past the post method, that would never have happened.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so it was an interesting example of where, it does seem to have had the effect that one would want. But Jess, what's your take on how it's been hard to get it passed in California? What's your read on who's against it and why?
I think it's multifaceted, as Zach hinted at. It has been vetoed several times, and I think that there are a combination of reasons. First, there's an issue of voting machines. We haven't always had the technology readily, easily, and cheaply available in California for counties and elections officers to necessarily count ranked choice ballots. And that's stuff that's not necessarily sexy to talk about, but it does cost money. It takes government procurement, et cetera. So that's an obstacle at the local level and on the broader level as well. There's also some political opposition because, as you know, California is a solidly blue state. So, there might be circumstances where a lot of establishment Democrats are saying, hey, well, actually, this first past the post system works pretty well for us at the state level, and we don't necessarily want to rock the boat.
It's like a very conservative argument for the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when you are really focused on a certain goal, you feel like the ends justify the means. And I think that might be the case here as well. But, there have been situations in California where, in ranked choice elections, people that the Democrats didn't necessarily hold up as their preferred candidates, took the election because of how ranked choice voting works. And they didn't like that. I would argue that's the way the system is designed to function, and you should just get a better candidate if you want them to win. But that's not always how it works. So, there will be people who are opposed to it, whether they think it's too complex for voters, which I actually don't think holds much water. If you look at the data from New York City, a lot of voters thought it was very easy to use and liked it and wanted to use it again. There are going to be some folks that think it's just not as good as an alternative voting system. Those people are probably going to be a smaller minority. And then there's going to be a large population of people who probably just don't want to think about our election system at all and don't really think it's that interesting, as opposed to, whatever specific juicy cultural issue of the moment is. But we would make the argument that electoral reform like this gives us a more representative democracy that sort of allows you to pursue whatever, issue is more important to you.
And Jess, you mentioned that there were cases in the past where ranked choice voting had been used and the outcome was not what the party leadership had wanted. Are there specific examples of that, or maybe you don't want to go too much into that detail? But it does seem like pretty undemocratic with a lowercase d. Well, if that's what the people want, then that's what they, who cares what the party leadership wants?
Yeah, agreed. But I mean, the party leadership is ultimately going to be concerned about the success of its party members. Because you don't often see political parties being so selfless that they're like, oh, well, we don't care if we win or our ideas prevail. We just want America to be happy. Like, that would be great, but ultimately that's not really how America works. The example I'm talking about is a little bit famous in the RCV world, and it's Jean Quan in Oakland. Zach, do you remember when this was? Like 2010?
It was, I think it was a little bit earlier than that. I can look it up while we're talking, but yeah, it was an interesting example. Essentially, there was Jean Quan was running against Don Parada in Oakland. I think it was for the mayor, right? And she went on a whole crusade to get, it was kind of like an anyone but Dawn campaign, and was just getting a ton of people to rank her second. And so you had someone like Don Parada who was getting like a lot of first place votes, but wasn't getting a lot of second place votes. And so it was kind of a situation like you were talking about, Tom, where, you know, he got probably like 40 something, I don't know the actual numbers, but it was probably up there, but he didn't get enough. And so Jean Quan ended up sneaking in there.
Yeah, she essentially campaigned for second place. And a lot of voters ranked her second. And because of how the mechanics of RCV work, she ended up prevailing. But at the same time, if Parada didn't have a majority of voters and Quan was more broadly acceptable, I would argue that is the more small d Democratic result.
Yeah, I would
think you're
too.
right, it was 2010.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you imagine another case study would be Donald Trump getting the GOP nomination. And in a way, like, on the one hand, clearly a lot of the remaining people who are registered Republicans really like that guy. But at that time, I feel like a lot of Republicans were not, he wasn't getting a lot of first place votes, but he didn't get the majority of first place votes. But you had everybody else spreading out, you know, Chris Christie or Jeb Bush or Rubio. Like, it was all distributed. All the non-Trump votes were distributed. And he just like outlasted them and got more PR hits, and, you know, he became president. And you wonder, wow, if they had ranked choice voting, I don't think Donald Trump would have gotten the Republican nomination. And I guess some people would say, well, that's great, like, because he was a kind of a bit of a extreme candidate. But then maybe other people would say, but look, like, he's the darling of the Republican Party. So clearly, you know, the process kind of worked. I'm guessing we're not all hardcore Trump supporters, but like, what's your view from a sort of outsider's perspective? Like, would ranked choice voting have helped the Republican Party, or would it have resulted in a more appropriate or representative outcome?
Well, I think there are a couple issues to unpack. RCV does not necessarily give you better candidates. It lets you make a more representative choice of the candidates that are put in front of you. I would argue it does permit other types of candidates to be more competitive. So, you know, in a lot of RCV elections, we've seen that there are more women, are more diverse candidates who are able to succeed. Part of this could be you don't necessarily have to have a runoff system. So it might be less expensive or less time consuming to run a campaign. So different types of people are allowed to participate in that process that otherwise could not have. You know, it can also give you different shades of candidates within a single party. So it doesn't just help people that necessarily want to vote third party, vote independent, et cetera. But for example, in the context of, you know, a presidential primary, you know, you can rank your preferences if you want, you know, a more conservative Democrat or a more liberal Republican, if you want something on that spectrum. But again, I think, you know, if you have a host of candidates that, you know, are all flawed in certain ways, RCV lets you make, I would argue, a better choice among those candidates, but it doesn't necessarily, you know, improve the candidate pool at any given time, unless at the local level, I think it does help a lot more. But I think it takes a lot of things to make it to those big elections like Senate, president. There are a lot of institutional forces. You already have to sort of have a lot of fundraising, have a lot of backing, have a lot of money, frankly, and a lot of privileges in your life to even be competitive for those positions. So I think in terms of RCV, it will have a really big impact at the local level, which will trickle up in time because it lets different, sometimes better candidates come in at the local level, and then they can sort of build up their resumes, their repertoires, and move up to those higher offices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, we have a new member that's supporting the channel. So welcome. Emily Ann Quinn. Thank you for becoming a member, helping us keep this nerd stream going for a few more months. Let me ask you, Zach, when you and we'll talk about level up for sure,
Yeah.
but about this ranked choice voting stuff, what's the engagement you've seen from the political parties? Because I could argue, I would love to see ranked choice voting. Actually, I feel like it might even be more important in the primaries than in the generals.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, have you is the general response neutral, or are there folks that are like, actually, we think this is a good idea, or is it wait and see? How are you? How's that
And
going?
you're asking about in terms of different political parties?
Yeah. Like,
So I know that we actually have it's a pretty diverse, politically diverse group of people within the coalition. We've got people who are traditionally Democratic. We've got a large libertarian contingency because a big part of it is, like third parties don't really, they don't really have a shot in a lot of cases. And ranked choice voting is a situation where you can, even if they still don't necessarily have a shot in certain elections, you can at least vote for them and not worry about spoiling the election. Like I even have a personal anecdote, like when Yang had dropped out by the time it was time to vote in the presidential primaries in California. So I was like, well, what do I do? Like, obviously, like this would be a totally wasted vote. But if it was ranked choice voting, then I would have just like stuck him at number one and then, gone down the list. But as it was, I was like, okay, I've been working on this for like almost a year now. Like, am I really not going to vote for the guy? And it was just this weird existential moment. But yeah, I think that in terms of like the great thing about ranked choice voting, and I think the reason it's going to be successful is that it really is a bipartisan thing, and not even it's multi-partisan. It's for everyone, and it's just going to make things better and allow you to vote your true preferences more easily. So I've seen pretty much entirely positive feedback from people, but like Jess said, there's always going to be people who are detractors for one reason or another. But usually their arguments are not like they're fairly forgettable, honestly.
And Jess, if I were to summarize it, it sounds like the official political parties, their leadership at most is taking a wait and see, or are you seeing any party leadership, like the organizers, saying, no, let's make this a thing for the Libertarian or the Democratic or Republican or the Green Party? Like, we want to embrace it fully, or is it mostly like, well, okay, it's interesting, let us know how it goes?
As Zach said, the third parties do seem to be fairly supportive. We have folks in the California RCV coalition who are very linked up with those groups, and it seems like they are quite supportive, especially the Libertarian Party. I don't know if they've taken official positions on RCV, but I would not be shocked if they did. In terms of the Democratic Party, Zach, you might have the details on this more than me, but I think there are at least a couple local Democratic clubs that have official positions on RTV, and it might be part of the state party platform at this point too.
Right. I was just trying to see. I couldn't see if that's actually the case. But I think another thing that's worth noting is that you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt at times, because UBI is a part of the official California Democratic Party platform, but that's like it hasn't made a lot of impact, I don't think.
Yeah, I would imagine the litmus test is, let's say the Libertarians, if they're really in favor of RCV for the general, then I would want them to use RCV for their own primaries. And kind of like, you can't say I'll pick my nominee, but then in the general we're going to use RCV.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting because I think that the concept of open primaries is another thing that is a little that's a little more polarizing, I think, because I know that there are arguments that say no, parties should be able to choose their own candidate. That's the whole reason for a party to exist, so that they can put their best forward. I don't know that that's actually how it's working, but I think that using ranked choice voting as in the primaries is maybe a little different. But I guess that would still be, you could still do that and still have a close primary. So never mind everything.
it could be a compromise. It's like, all right, keep your primary closed, but at least use RCV, because like as an example, I was just reading a news article about the passing of John McAfee, the libertarian kind of antivirus software guy. And he was actually on the Nerd Show during the libertarian primaries. And that guy was very out there, very out there. And I thought to myself, wow, he's an example of someone who could somehow amass enough kind of interest, because he's so kind of dynamic, I guess you could say. But like would be a very bad thing for the Libertarian Party, because he would kind of, taint it in a way, because he was so unstable. At least during the interview with me, he was not really cogent. And you would think that the Libertarians and any other party would want RCV to kind of insulate themselves from a person who's kind of dragging them in one direction and doesn't appeal to the majority of their own party. But hopefully we'll see who adopts it, and any third party that wants to promote RCV for the general, I would ask them, like, well, why aren't you doing it for your primaries? Kind of put your money where your mouth is. Let's talk about Level Up California. I heard about a transition of the Yang Gang Farmers Table to the Level Up California Farmers Table. Tell me a little bit more about what you all are up to.
Yeah, so we started tabling for RCV. We hadn't rebranded it to Level Up at that point. And we all did a lot of soul searching during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So much was uncertain, but we did know that we had, built this really wonderful grassroots community in California during the campaign. And we were also inspired by the Yang campaign and really took the values and objectives of that campaign to heart. And we thought, we want to start making these changes right in our own backyard. So how can we do this? A lot of us, as Zach said, were political novices. We hadn't been super engaged in politics before, but we had, learned so much, and most of it was self-taught during the campaign. And a lot of us didn't know a ton about state or local politics when we started this. So a lot of it was, making connections with groups on the ground, learning what was happening in our own state, educating ourselves, and then figuring out what exactly our role was going to be. So, our organization has evolved a bit with, all of this soul searching and finding our new identity in a post-Yang 2020 world. But I think, as Zach can go into more detail with, since he is our incoming president, we're really excited about the work that we're doing. I'll talk a little bit about the work that we have done since rebranding, and Zach can talk about sort of where we're at now. But, in the past year, we helped with the basic income marches with Income Movement, which is a wonderful organization that's focused on UBI. We co-hosted 3 basic income marches in LA, Mountain View, and Hesperia. And Andrew was able to come and attend our Mountain View event, which was wonderful. We did a CTC rally in LA. We hosted a Yang Gang book club for Forward, which was fascinating, just to kind of nerd out with everyone and talk about the ideas in the new book and the direction the Forward Party was going to go. Had a lot of social events just to try and, recreate that wonderful sense of community that we all found during the campaign. We also helped out with a lot of grassroots campaigns in 2020. We were very involved with David Kim's race, and we're very excited to see him running again. So we've managed to do a lot of different things. And one of the initiatives we're most proud of is our Policy Nerd Night series, which all the nerds here will appreciate. And this kind of came from us, learning about politics ourselves and thinking, wow, this is so cool. And we loved having this group where we could sort of like engage and ask deep, nuanced questions in a solutions-oriented, not left, not right, but forward type of way. And we were all very interested in data. And so, we were sort of learning about these issues and thinking, we want to be able to share this knowledge with other people because it's so valuable. And we also want to sort of, in the way that our Cal RCV happened, we want to be able to connect people with organizations that are doing this work on the ground, because we're recognizing we're not necessarily subject area experts in everything. Like, we know a lot about UBI, we know a lot about RCV. We also care about a lot of other issues, a lot of which were part of the Yang 2020 platform, but we haven't been in the state doing this work for decades. So we want to sort of, feature and highlight people who are experts in the field, and then direct people towards, whatever cause, organization, or initiative is going to have the highest impact for their time. So Policy Nerd Nights is a really cool series, and we do have a nice event coming up, but I'll let Zach talk about that.
Yeah, so hopefully I don't get the date wrong. February 9th, we've got a panel that we're hosting along with the Cal RCV about RCV, featuring Andrew Yang, Rob Ritchie, and Maria Perez. So that'll be a banger. Nice. So go ahead and join that. I'm sure we can get an RSVP link posted somewhere. But yeah, I think, Level Up, one of the interesting things that I've been thinking about a lot, and, coming in as president, it seems like something that I should spend a lot of time thinking about is, just what, during the Yang 2020 campaign, there was a very specific goal that we had in mind. There was something that we were working towards, and it had a small time frame in order to get it done. And so it was a lot easier to focus on that and get a lot of people involved and engaged. And now we're in this kind of in-between spot where, like Jess said, we still want to get some of the things done. Like that, most of us were not supportive of Andrew Yang just because we liked his haircut. We liked the fact that he was putting these policy ideas out there, and they seemed very well researched and well thought out, and they just made sense. So we just wanted to keep going with that. And so now it's this, the big challenge is, how do we actually get that done? How do we get people motivated when there isn't one particular thing that they can focus on? And so a big part of our job is going to be, helping people figure out what that is. And I think that something like Cal RCV came out of that because we realized, okay, well, here's something that we can do. And then we've seen how successful it's been to just, bring people together, build a partnership, and then start this whole coalition. So that's the type of thing that I think we're going to continue doing, where, we aren't experts, but we do know how to bring people together, and we're fairly friendly. So we can meet with people and really research through our Policy Nerd Nights, like, okay, what's going on with this particular issue? Okay, who's working on that? Oh, are they talking to each other? Let's bring them together. Let's see if we can come up with a plan for this and figure it out. So I think that's a big part of what we're going to do, and also focusing on building community and just trying to stay focused, but also open and be welcoming to anyone who wants to come in. And, like Jess said, we weren't really involved with anything before Yang 2020. So you can start anytime. It's never too late.
Right on. Well, I can't believe our time has come up already. It flew by, and it was great to hear about Level Up California and the Ranked Choice Voting Initiative, and Jess and Zach, all that you've been doing. Any final remarks before we wrap up?
I would just encourage people to check out the website, follow us on social media. We would love to get you onboarded and get you involved. I'll also say that we are an organization that is all about our membership. So, we have a lot of folks that are, very busy in their personal lives. Maybe they only have an hour here and there to volunteer, and we still welcome you to come in. It's a really friendly community. And we also are absolutely open to taking on initiatives from our members. We've had a couple people come in and say, hey, I'm really passionate about this and would love to, host an event or, start an initiative, et cetera. And we will take that in and consider it. And if it aligns with our mission and vision, we go for it. So if you, think that something needs to be happening in California and it's not happening, and it aligns with Level Up California's mission and vision, feel free to pitch it to us, and we would love to hear about it.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is, I think that sometimes the idea of, spending your time volunteering on something can be a little bit daunting. You might be worried that you don't have enough time, but something that I like to say in every single meeting that I'm leading is that I appreciate every second of every minute that people are spending volunteering, because you don't have to be here. You're not getting paid to be here. In some cases, you're actually donating to the organization that you're helping out. So you're actually paying to be there in a way. Not actually, you can't give us money and then get into our core team meetings. You gotta do the work. But I think that, don't worry about not having enough time. Just and that's a big reason we want to build a community, is because, it's just about, creating a community of service in a way, and, just helping out where you can, because it's gonna take a long time. So let's just do what we can while we can.
I love it. You guys are committed, and there's a lot of folks who may have faded out a little bit after the presidential campaign, and I'm so impressed that you guys are still at it and growing it and taking playing the long game, and hopefully that will have some ripple effects over time. And excited to keep track and have you all back on, and appreciate you both spending time on your Sunday morning on a little nerdy podcast. I really appreciate it. With that, I'll say goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
Bye-bye. All right. So I'm just gonna. So thanks, Jess and Zach. I've asked remove them from the studio. I'm gonna do some quick thank yous to supporters of the channel, but definitely go check out levelupcalifornia.org if you want to get involved with what they're doing, because they are doing great work. Okay, so let's thank some of our members. Hold on one second. And okay, so the people who make this channel possible. Share screen. I think we have a new member. We're going to thank Emily in a second. But let's start with our highest level, which is a senior vice president. And that is Soldier One. Thank you, Soldier One. Okay, next level down is our vice presidents, our executive team. We have, let's see, total time as member, Kristen Slevin, Bike, and Stephen Jones. Thank you, our VPs. And then the next level are our hardcore. They are Gene, David, DK, Jackalego, Kirsch, Mr. History, Byram, Mona, Susan, Vaughn, Yang, Tony, Robert, Dean, Stat, Galessa, J. Perrin, AH, J. Brian, Vivian, Dana, Yoda, Jason, and Parth. Okay. And then finally, our entry level, we have Lisa, Albert, Brandon, Peter, Arez, Yermaman, Sophia, Jadwiga, Mike, Doris, Emerald, Lori, Ben, Roger, Lisa, Rasta, Elizabeth, James, Emma, Hui, Ira, Patrick, Shoni, Jameson, Dr. William, Karen, Monica, Ardent, Semery, Mai, David, Brittany, Alexandra, Wana, Warren, Lucky, Kevin, Emily, Finney, and H3 Simp. And then we're going to shout out overall our oldest members, Lisa, Jean, and Kristen. And our youngest members are Stephen, Finney, and H3. And Emily just rejoined during this show. So thank you all for making this channel possible. I also want to give a shout out to some of our trending of the people.us candidates. So if you guys haven't already, go ahead and vote and approve anyone you like at ofthepeople.us. I'll put that in the chat. There it is, ofthepeople.us. And let's take a look at who's trending on Of the People right now. So I'm going to stop sharing there, and I'm going to bring up the OTP candidates, give them a little exposure on the Nerd Show. So trending is based on the most number of recent approval votes, and highest is Christy Seelock, then Dr. Jermaine Johnson, then Ali Dalzimer, then Russ Russell, then Shervin Azami, and David Kim, and Imani Oakley, and Ryan Stark. I mean, the list goes on, and you can even sort if you want on OTP by policy. So you could say, well, what about for UBI? And then you can see who are the top UBI candidates: Christy Seelock, Ali Dalzimer, and Shervin Azami. And you can even go from popular. You can say, well, what about by all time? And that would be Christy, Ali, and Austin Searle. And then Shervin would be number 4, and then Josh Whale would be number 5. And then you can sort by your zip code. So if you let's say you're at 07430, then you can see who are the closest pro UBI candidates based on your zip code. And then you can then even filter by policy issues. And you see if you're on the East Coast, Brittany Ramos de Barros would be a pretty good choice. So you can learn more about any candidate by just clicking on their name. You can see a link to their website, follow them on Twitter. Oftentimes there's a video, their description, their recent tweets, and then you click this approval button, and that will help them get more exposure and help them get higher up on the list on OTP. So check it out. Vaughn is asking, hey, Tom and Forward Party doing something together. Well, I have reached out to the Forward Party and let them know that OTP is a great platform. So, generally, if there's a Forward Party candidate that is officially announced, we'll do our best to list them on OTP and then let the people vote if they want to approval vote them. But excited to work with all parties, and of course, the Forward Party is doing great work. So we're hopeful to support whatever they're doing. I should also mention that OTP is a open platform. So some people have said like, oh, I saw there's a Republican listed there, or there's someone who's, not pro UBI listed on OTP. Yeah, OTP is nonpartisan. So any candidate can list themselves and they can describe what they support. And, as long as they're not like, endorsing hate speech or anything violent, people are allowed to approval vote them and, let the chips fall where they may. And then other people have said, hey, Tom, I can't believe you didn't list such and such a candidate. It is also an open platform where currently, if a candidate doesn't want to be listed, that we want to respect that choice that they've made. Maybe down the road, we may make it clear that we'll try and list as many candidates as we can. And if a candidate chooses not to claim their profile, we can kind of indicate that. But right now, we've made it so pretty much voluntary. So if a candidate doesn't want to be up and listed and compared to other candidates, or doesn't want to have people approval vote them, then they have the power to tell us, and then we'll of course respect that. So if you see anybody on OTP that you want to support and increase their exposure, go ahead and go to ofthepeople.us and vote them up and approval vote them. You might discover some candidates you hadn't heard of, which is obviously the main point of OTP. But you can support candidates that you do like and make sure they kind of move up on that list. And then the other thing is, if you don't see a candidate listed and you want them, just go tag them on Twitter and say, hey, I noticed you're not on Of the People. Can you list your campaign there? And if they, even if they want, we're happy to create the profile for them based on their website. But they just need to say okay. And lastly, Vaughn is saying, hey, I'm a fan of star voting. Yeah, we probably will introduce other voting types. Approval technically was the easiest for us to implement, but we might consider star, or within a district, ranked choice voting. So it just requires work. And while I'm speaking of work, it's all done by volunteers. And our volunteers are able to pay for the licensing costs of software and hosting fees and email accounts and those kinds of things because of our patrons. So people support us on Patreon, and I want to just kind of shout out the names of our of the people Patreon supporters. We have Eric Sanchez, Tohir, Elizabeth, Tony, Rockout, Iggy, Aaron, Byram, Sugar, John, Rob, Timothy, Jessica, Trickle Up, Jean, Muhan, Travis, Austin, Mai, and Dylan. So thank you all for supporting of the people. It's good to support competition and democracy. So thanks for everybody for doing that. And maybe we should that reminds me, should see if I can connect Level Up and OTP. So I'll follow up with Jess and Zach offline. But with that, I've got to jump. So goodbye, nerds.